For white belts, one of the more frustrating elements of Jiu Jitsu is if you can actually get to the back, then finishing a choke. That can be a really difficult place for a lot of newbies, beginners, even semi-experienced white belts, right? We have to fight through hand defense, shin defense. It can be a tough, frustrating place because you finally get to the back and then you can't finish. Today's video, I'm gonna help you get better at that, finishing from the back. Let's dive in. Now, this first tip was probably one of the biggest game changers in finishing from the back that I ever was able to implement into my game. Many times I could get to the back. I have a wrestling background, so I didn't have much trouble getting there, but then finishing the choke was a very difficult task. Oftentimes I would just get my seatbelt grips, then trying to immediately launch my forearm under my opponent's chin to finish the choke, and oftentimes not being able to finish that. From my own perspective and experience, I feel that this is just a very telegraphed movement, and everybody knows that if you're on my back, I know that you're going to try to choke me. So it's very easy to predict what's coming next. So instead of going straight for the choke, what I like to do is reach for the shoulder. And if I really have to, I'll finger walk over to the shoulder. Now, once I park my hand on his deltoid or his shoulder, if I can, I like to shrug his shoulder up, almost so he says, I don't know. From here, I'm not essentially choking my opponent yet, but it is much more difficult for my opponent to reach my wrist to block the choke. If my hand and forearm are parked right underneath your neck, it's very easy for you to grab up and pull that down. Now, if I'm able to get my hand all the way over to your shoulder, if you come straight up, you're grabbing my forearm, which isn't going to have the leverage necessary to protect yourself. It's also much more difficult to reach your hand all the way over to get onto his wrist that's on your shoulder. It's just a very awkward position for the person defending. Once I've gotten that hand on his shoulder, it's very easy to slide over that shoulder, over his collarbones, and over his trap. From here, all I really have to do is gable grip, push my head into the back of his, breathe in nice and deep, and begin to slowly secure that choke. And even if your opponent is able to drop his chin, trying to block your forearm, because of the leverage and the power you have in this position, it's very easy to choke through their chin or turn it into a very painful face crank. Consider the fight between Conor McGregor and Khabib. If Conor McGregor, with millions of people watching, with millions of dollars on the line, will tap to this, I think it's safe to say that this will work in any occasion. Now, I always like to stress, be good to your training partners. You don't have to full send this thing if you're in the training room with your training buddies. But in a self-defense scenario, a tournament scenario, yeah, you can be a bit more rough with this and it'll be brutal. But that's only if their chin is in the way. Many times, that forearm will slip underneath the chin so smoothly, so nicely, and it's a nice, easy finish from there. So in your back takes, if you're struggling to finish your rear naked chokes, try capturing the shoulder first, then slipping over that onto the trap, and I think that you'll see more success there. Number 2, hand fighting. Now, I see a lot of people struggling with the hand fighting element when on the back trying to choke an opponent. And honestly, I could probably make an entire video on hand fighting in this position alone. My goal for this is to keep it nice and simple. So I'm gonna give you one of my most favorite and effective ways to trap a hand, thus leading you to an easier choke. As you can see here in this example, I'm on the back and I've achieved my seatbelt grip. The hand that we're going to be using for hand fighting will be the one that's going through your opponent's armpit. Oftentimes, we're in the seatbelt grip and your opponent will bring both of his hands to you, trying to unravel the seatbelt grip. This is great because I don't like to go hunting for hands. I want you to come to me. I'm not some Steven Seagal master where I'm going to catch your wrist out of midair. I know that you realize this is a threatening position and you're going to bring your hands to me to help solve that problem. As soon as you bring your hands to me, the hand that's in the armpit will let go of the seatbelt grip and obtain an overhand grip on the same side wrist as your opponent. From here, much like a tricep extension, I'm gonna punch that arm down and away. Unless he's a higher level grappler and knows how to unravel this, most people will try to fight their arm back up. But because of the muscles involved, you're gonna have the upper hand here. Now, once that hand is punched down and away, your other opposite hand can go straight for the shoulder. And we already know what to do here. We're gonna finger walk to the shoulder if we need. We'll slip over the collarbone and the trap, and then we can begin to work our choke. The reason this works so well is because the hand that you're blocking is the ideal hand hand for him to use to block your choke. In this example, I'm blocking his left hand from being involved in the situation. The only hand he has available to unravel the situation is his right hand. In using his right hand, he doesn't have the proper leverage or positioning to effectively block my right hand from choking him. It's awkward for him to reach up and try to pull that right arm down that's applying the choke. And the great part about this is, in many cases, if you climb that choking hand far enough over his trap and using your head to press his head forward, you can sometimes get a one-handed choke from here. And I know that seems like it looks complex or really cool. It's honestly pretty simple. All you're doing is climbing that choking hand as far as you can over his trap as possible. At the same time, taking a really big deep breath, expanding your chest and taking space away from him. All the while you're pressing your head into the back of his, forcing his chin down. You probably won't get an instant tap from this, but most chokes aren't instant taps anyways. You're gonna have to hold it, be nice and patient, nice, slow, increasing pressure as you complete the choke. You practice that a few times and you're gonna see that it's not as complicated as you probably once thought it was. But you don't have to finish it one-handed. Because of your left hand blocking his left hand from helping, if we were gonna consider this a race to the choke, your left hand has a head start. So if you find that you're not completing the one-handed choke, it's very easy and simple to quickly remove your left hand from that situation and bring it up to the top to help you complete that choke. One of the biggest lessons for myself that I've taken from Jiu Jitsu is that I don't make an opinion on a technique until I've trained it for a long time. There's been plenty of times where even as a white belt, I had given up on a technique because I couldn't do it. And really, it wasn't that I couldn't do it, I just couldn't do it right at the time. I revisit it later on and it works beautifully. So don't get frustrated if some of this stuff doesn't work right away. It's just a matter of reps. Last but not least, finding an alternate finish from the back. Now, sometimes your opponents will be really good at choke defense. And even though you're doing everything correctly, you just can't find the choke. And that's okay. That's actually pretty common for white belts. One thing I like to transition to that a lot of people don't see coming is hitting an armbar from the back. As we move forward with this example, I want to consider my left hand as the helper hand and my right hand as the attack hand. As you can see here, I've got my helper hand blocking his left hand, and I've got my attack hand, my right hand, applying the choke. I can't find the choke, so what do? I remove my attack hand by pulling that back and away, and then I re-wrap my arm over his head on the opposite side it once was. From here, I'm gonna reach down and get a grip on the wrist that my left hand was gripping. Once you secure this grip, you're basically 80% of the way done. It's very hard for your opponent to fight this once you've got this locked up. What I will then do is I will pendulum swing my right leg out and away from my opponent. At the same time, I'm leaning back and away to the left. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm removing myself from his back and giving him the option to fall down. The last thing I want to do is get in his way in this sequence. As I begin to drop to my back and my leg is pendulum swinging over his head, I'm still maintaining that grip that I secured. Once my right leg is over his head and making contact with his face, I'm picturing putting my hamstring or my leg pit right across his mouth and his nose. Now, this isn't a smother choke by any means. It's just a landmark that I like to use to help me know I'm in the right place. Sometimes if I can't get across the nose, the forehead will work great. Once I'm in this position, I am sitting up and my opponent is laying flat on his back. Many times, your opponent will grip their hands together because they know the armbar is coming. Now from here, I would say that most of the time with most of the opponents you're gonna face, it's going to be a waste of energy and time trying to pull his hands apart towards your body. If I can show you this example, if I have a gable grip, right? Or an S grip, if you were to pull my hands apart this way, this is the way that it's the strongest. You don't wanna pull this way because you're wasting time and energy. What you want to do is pull the hands apart this way. Or if it's an S grip, you want to pull the hands apart this way. So as you can see in this example, I'm almost applying Americana pressure to this grip by twisting his hand out and away towards his head. Especially if you're going to be competing, you don't want to waste any time or energy on stuff that doesn't work. Don't try to pull his hands apart in the way they're the most strong. You want to pull them apart in the way that's most effective. Now, obviously, there are multiple grip breaks from this position. I am just trying to keep this simple for the video, but if you guys have grip breaks that you like from this position, drop them in the comments comments because I always love reading through those. Now, once you've broken that grip, it's all yours. You need to rotate around, get your baseball bat style grip on his wrist, and make sure his thumb is pointed towards the ceiling. Now, I do want to mention something really quick because I do believe you can develop a training scar if you don't understand the concept here. Most of us are taught that the thumb needs to be pointed towards the ceiling when we complete an armbar, when in actuality, it needs to be perpendicular to your hips, right? Most of the time when you're learning a basic armbar, your hips will be facing the ceiling, which is why they tell you thumb up and away. Now, if you tilt your hips in any direction, you need to be perpendicular or 90 degrees to those hips. Now, let's say you're trying to hit an inverted armbar, right? And you're facing his thumb to the sky. Well, you're not perpendicular. The thumb is not pointing away perpendicular to the hips. You're still pointing it to the sky because that's the way you learned it. But because of that, you're not going to have the braking pressure that you need to get the tap. If you're a white belt, you're probably not hitting any of the fancier arm bars like inverted arm bars, but that's just a little tip that you can put in your back pocket for later, because I have seen that affect people negatively and they don't understand the concept. And in order to really progress your jiu-jitsu and be better at it, understanding the concepts will help you out immensely because they apply in more than just one spot, right? Concepts apply to the big picture. And those are some of my favorite ways to get the submission from the back. Obviously, there are so many different ways to do this. And if you guys have ones that you prefer that I didn't talk about, drop them in the comments because, like I said, I always love reading those, and we're building a community here where I'm not the only teacher. Everybody in the comments can help as well. You'd be surprised how many people can come through and learn from you guys in the comments. With that, you know how we like to end them, sometimes backwards, always forwards. I'll see you in the next one.